Hello everybody. The last decade in the motoring world has been a rather tumultuous one. We have seen the end of many much-loved models and sometimes companies, but we have also seen the rebirth of a few others. And as far as I am concerned, one of the greatest success stories, particularly from a British perspective in this time, has to be that of Kia. They have gone from being a sort of oft overlooked, somewhat odd brand that would be the butt of the occasional joke, to regularly featuring on best-selling lists for cars full stop. The last 5 years have also seen a deliberate effort from the firm to try and move the brand more upmarket too, and I would say this has worked. However, with this improved quality has naturally come increased prices. And so today I am asking the very important question: though a Kia is surely a good car, is it still good value? A couple of things have prompted today's video. First off, the fact that my mother was on the hunt for a new car, and a Kia was top of her list, specifically a Ceed, just like this one. However, I also recently got to drive the Dacia Sandero, and for many, the Dacia is the embodiment of cheap, carefree, happy-go-lucky motoring. Though those have increased in price dramatically in the last few years, the model I drove now being £15,500, in the grand scheme of things, they are still relatively affordable. For some context, this Ceed 2, the cheapest model in the lineup, now starts at £22,500, so about £7,000 or nearly 50% more than the Dacia. And simply put, for me, to justify this car at all, it has to be markedly better. So then, is it? Well, let's begin by a quick look at the spec sheet, and already the Kia does a lot right. Here you have a 1.5 litre engine versus the one of the Dacia. You also have a whole extra cylinder for a grand total of 4. There is another gear too, so 6 for the Ceed versus 5 for the Sandero, and you've got quite a bit more poke as well. Where the Romanian entry may do with 90 horsepower, Korea's effort instead has nearly 70 more, a total of 158. Granted, some of that is offset by the extra weight of the Ceed, which is near 300 kilos heavier, though in its defense, in terms of sizing, it's also realistically almost a class up. I suspect the Kia Rio is likely a fairer comparison, but I don't have one of those to hand, nor have I actually driven one, and I think they're discontinuing it anyway. In total, this is something like 2/3 of a foot longer, about 200 to 250 mil, though from in here, you don't really feel it so much. Both cars seem to me like they've got roughly equivalent space inside the cabin. In terms of boot space, the Kia feels like it's marginally larger, but again, the difference for me is not significant enough. For your reference, the large camera bag that I have is the size of an airline carry-on, and you could easily get about 2 or 3 of those in the back of one of these. The model lineup for the Ceed also has a little bit more to choose from. For the Dacia, you have a choice of just 2 trims. Here you have 4. This entry-level model is the 2. Then above that, you have the GT line, which is £3,000 more. It comes with a slightly nicer interior, larger screen here, 17-inch alloys in place of the 16s that this has, which are already a little bit nicer than the 16-inch steel wheels you get on the Dacia. You have more adjustment for the seats. The materials are better, featuring a faux leather option that for me is certainly of benefit to those that have young children, and you've got a few other subtle touches throughout as well. Above that then, you have the 3 trim, and then at the top, the GT Line S, which historically would be my pick of the bunch, and of course is the one most feature laden. It's got all sorts of toys and tech in it. However, it's 31 and a bit £1,000, or to put it another way, the price of 2 Dacia Sanderos. There are also, in the Dacia's defense, a few things that car did have which this does not, including keyless entry. And I must admit to feeling a little bit stupid, because first off, when I did get in this car, I put the key in, turned it, and then spent quite some time looking for the start button. which it doesn't have. How times have changed. Both of them have electric windows all around. Both of them have both cruise control and a speed limiter, which I really like. Both of them have a combination of analog and digital gauges for the dashboard, and both of them do their job fairly well. However, the Kia, both outside and in, does feel like a far more quality product. From the lines of it to the materials chosen, this car does just have a sense of being a little bit nicer from start to finish. The Dacia you sat in, and you could tell it was a car that somebody had made to budget. And there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. However, this just feels like a decent car, and this feeling really does extend to just about everything you interact with, from the air conditioning controls, which again, like the Dacia, are basic but functional. They feel a lot nicer. The window switches, again, both of them did their job, but these just seem a little more upmarket. The interior also is a touch more refined, and things like the dash just have an air of being a little nicer. Even the shape of the speaker grills seems to have had a touch more effort put into it. Depending on the trim level you choose, the Kia will also give you a few more safety systems. I know they're not universally loved, but even in this model you have lane keep assist, which to be honest I don't like, though happily you can just hold the button down here and turn it off. In this base model, you still have both Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, and the former, at least, is wireless, which is very handy, particularly for the likes of me that have got a phone with a USB-C cable that no longer works. It has, nevertheless, communicated with the car perfectly, and this week I have been able to enjoy Android Auto with absolutely no issues whatsoever. That's nice. Perhaps most impressive is the fact that despite this car is carrying a bit more weight, has a bit more power, and is a little larger, it's almost as efficient as the Dacia. That, on an average run over a motorway journey, I was getting about 52 to the gallon. This is doing around 51, and even when enjoying myself on the lanes, I've still been able to get into the high 40s. I also happen to really like this engine, and I'm very glad to say that this is yet another Kia that's a little bit more fun to drive than you might expect. Yes, there is an element of turbo lag, but if you do let the engine rev out, you'll find it also pulls very, very keenly all the way to its 6,500 RPM red line. Lotus Elise it is not, but I think the model will surprise you. Those who also need something a little bit bigger will find there are a few other variants of the Ceed as well. The Dacia, granted, has the Sandero stepway, a sort of crossover-inspired version that does bring with it a few other options, including ones with a little bit more power. However, for the Ceed, you've got this, the regular 5-door hatch, which would be my pick of the bunch. Then you have the Pro Ceed, a rather nice shooting brake type affair that I've got something of a soft spot for. The Ceed crossover that I've never really been that fond of, and then there is simply a Ceed Estate, or Sport Wagon, I think they like to call it. One of those, particularly in higher GT Line S trim, would make, I think, an excellent daily driver for anybody that needs just a car, but with a little bit more space in it. The gearbox is enjoyable, the clutch is pretty decent, the brakes work perfectly well. This is a fun car to hustle. Though I will say, around town, I think I've had more issues with this than just about any other Kia that I've had. I'm not quite sure entirely why, but I haven't been able to gel all that well with either the clutch or the brakes in this car. I have even, I will admit, stalled it about 2 or 3 times, and that doesn't really happen to me much these days, so when it does, I take note of it. The brakes also seem just a little overly keen when you're simply moving through traffic and want to bring yourself to a halt from sort of 3 or 4 miles an hour. They can be a little bit overly aggressive. Heel and toe can be done, though the pedals are spaced just a little bit far apart for it to be easy. Yet, if you want to, you can do it. I would say that the suspension in this also feels just a little bit better set up, both more compliant at lower speeds and also a little bit more sure-footed at higher ones. The steering too is a little bit better. Both have an electric power steering system, but Kia have always been very proud of their rack-mounted electric power steering system, which I think does give better feel than most of its competition. Traction is also not too bad. As you can probably see, it's a little bit damp and greasy out there today, and still, the car does a pretty good job. The car, of course, does have traction control, and on the exit of the occasional bend it's intervened, but only for a tiny moment, and then it's allowed you to simply carry on your merry way. Though I haven't been able to give this car anywhere near the thorough test I have the Dacia, that I did some 2,000 miles in, this more like about 400 or 500, I can tell you it certainly feels a lot better screwed together. The Dacia, after about 2 or 3 days, developed a number of fairly annoying rattles, which is rather unfortunate. I also, and this is pure observation, seem to feel like there's more Kia dealers about than there are Dacia. I can't actually even think of where my local Dacia dealer would be, yet for Kia, I know of about 4 of them. And on that note, it's also difficult to ignore the Kia warranty. That's something I think that really made the firm a number of years ago when they introduced it. Famously, it's 7 years or 100,000 miles. And though I know a lot of people will go and tell you, yeah, but there's some little clauses and things like that, well, I've read through it and there doesn't seem to be all that much there. More to the point, it's 7 years of something, which is just not what you're going to get from Dacia. Instead, they'll offer you 3 years and I think about 60,000 miles. Oh, and a little top tip from me. If you are thinking of buying one of these but don't want to get one brand spanking new, instead slightly used, if you buy it from a Kia main dealer that's part of the Kia approved scheme, if the car has less than a certain number of miles and is less than 2 years old, they will actually top it up to get the full 7 years and 100,000 miles of warranty. That is very handy to know, and I think really a statement of the firm's belief in its own products. As it happens, though Mum was very interested in a Ceed, we actually worked out it was probably going to be a slightly too big a car for her. So instead, what she bought was a Picanto. And if you're currently watching this thinking, well, yes, I would like a sort of newish car, but I don't really need one quite as big as this, I'd really recommend one of those. Specifically, the 1-litre turbo GT Line S. For me, it's one of the hidden gems of the motoring world. A car that on paper plays second fiddle to the VW Up GTI, but I think is actually far superior. Drives nicer, better inside, more or less just as quick, and comes with your usual Kia warranty and all that stuff. I also happen to think it's a good-looking car too. As with every other manufacturer that prides itself on making affordable cars, Kia is currently undergoing something of a transformation. You see, the simple fact is they have to start producing EVs. They've been doing so for quite a while, and as it happens, they've all been thus far pretty good. However, as I'm sure you well know, electric cars are not cheap. And so I think Kia have been very wise to, over the last few years, start moving the brand more upmarket. This way, as EVs become ever more popular and ever more mainstream, the transition from ICE to EV in terms of price isn't going to feel like quite as much a shock. How the likes of Dacia and so on are going to manage this, I'm keen to find out. I should also point out there are of course plenty of alternatives to the likes of Dacia if you want yourself an affordable but new car. We have SsangYong, though chiefly they make SUVs and pickups, but also MG. I did actually do a deal to get an MG press car a while back, and then things got in the way. I need to rearrange that because I myself would quite like to see what exactly the firm has to offer. I know they also recently have put in great effort to make their cars feel just a little bit more upmarket, and from what I've seen thus far, it seems to be working. But my week with the Ceed, I'm happy to say, has told me that thus far, Kia is still able to provide good value cars. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of people out there already commenting, oh, 22 grand for a Kia Ceed, that should be about 12. Well, I'm afraid the whole market has changed. Cars are simply now a lot more expensive than they once were. And when you look at the market as a whole, they still do offer pretty darn good value for money. Are they the cheapest out there anymore? No, they're not. And if what you must have is simply a brand new car that functions for as little as you can get it, buy a Dacia Sandero. it's a good car. But if you want one that feels like you haven't bought the cheapest thing out there, and actually might impress you even if you've come from the likes of BMW, Mercedes or Audi, the Kia is definitely worth a shout. Anyway, as ever, I want to say a big thank you to them for lending me the car, and to you for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, comment down below and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you for the next one. Bye bye.